What's going on, guys? It's Zach here. I'm bringing you guys another fantasy football video. And this one I'm going to go over the 5 of the players that I've identified as some of the worst values in auction drafts on the ESPN platform. I'm specifically choosing the ESPN platform because I'm assuming that's generally the platform that the majority of you are using. I know Sleeper has gotten more popular over the years, and there's still Yahoo and other things like that. So I will try and get some videos or some information out on those as well. If you go to my website right now, you can already see my rankings where I outline the projected auction value of a player based off of their ADP. I've just done a uh, exponential regression of the ADP versus historical auction values, and that gives you a good baseline in terms of what you should expect to pay for a player in an auction draft based off of where they're being drafted in standard snake formats. Just for the record, all of these auction values I'm showing on my website are assuming a $200 budget and a 12-team PPR league, so you might have to scale that accordingly with whatever settings your league has, but it should be a good baseline for you guys, and any of the value discrepancies should line up regardless of what your league format is. So I think the best way to do that is then you can see that not only are you maybe in or out on a player, but then you can look and see from platform to platform where the best values lie. I already put out a video outlining some of the best values on the ESPN platform. These are values in terms of the price you have to pay for them in an auction draft compared to what they would cost you in a snake draft. And then this video will be outlining some of the players that are actually far worse values in auction drafts on ESPN than they would be in a snake draft. So I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm happy to explain a little bit further and just really want to try and help you guys take advantage of any sort of draft settings, any sort of platform you're on, and really just try and go into your drafts with the biggest advantages you can. So yeah, with that, let's get into the first player here. So coming in as what appears to be the worst value on ESPN auction drafts right now, we have Rashad White. I actually think that Rashad White's a fine draft pick at his ADP, especially in PPR formats. He could certainly catch 50 plus passes this season, and honestly has fringe top 15 upside at the position. He could be a player that catches even 80 passes this season. He's a talented pass catcher. There's really no competition for touches in that offense. So I don't hate Rashad White, the player, by any means, but on the ESPN platform, he's going to cost you roughly 13% of your budget. And given his ADP, which is somewhere in the 7th, 8th round right now, he should cost you only about 2.5%. And just that discrepancy is far too great for me. You're basically paying a 4th round draft price for him, late 3rd, early 4th, if you pay 13% of your draft capital, and doing that's just going to make it really hard for him to actually be a meaningful draft pick for you in your auction drafts because he would have to drastically exceed his ADP for him to actually pay off at that auction price. So if you want exposure to Rashad White, I don't mind doing that, but I would recommend you get that on Underdog and snake drafts or on a different platform. I just don't see it really working out for you if you buy him in an auction draft where he actually goes for anywhere near his pre-draft value. Up next, I thought I'd talk about a receiver here. Again, sort of on the inverse of what I talked about in the previous video, going over the best values. The ESPN platform seems really heavily skewed towards running backs in terms of how much they favor running backs and justify paying extra for them compared to what you see on other platforms like Underdog, which is where most of the ADP data we're getting is from right now. So I think that in general on the ESPN platform, most of the wide receivers actually do present themselves as values because ESPN seems to give them a lower value than running backs, which is generally what we've seen over the last, honestly, 5-10 years in fantasy football, but it does seem like that's changing this season where people are being much more aggressive in terms of drafting wide receivers early. So it was actually hard to find a wide receiver that wasn't really a value on the ESPN platform, but Chris Godwin did stand out. I think he's a really talented player, and he's probably going to catch a lot of passes this season, but the Bucs offense is going to struggle going from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield. He's being drafted in around the 6th round on Underdog right now, which I think is a fine ADP in a snake draft, but on ESPN he's going to cost you roughly 10% of your budget, which is closer to drafting him in that middle to late 4th round. He should only cost you about 5.5% if you were just to draft him at that ADP and assume that should be his projected value here. So I think if you do want to draft Chris Godwin, it just doesn't make sense to do that on the ESPN platform. There are plenty of other receivers you can draft on ESPN, especially ESPN, really, just because the wide receiver position, like I said, is super undervalued there. So I would recommend that if you want to draft wide receivers, definitely it's advantageous to do it on the ESPN platform in auction drafts, but you're going to have a hard time if you draft Chris Godwin there. Again, you can feel free to refer to my website as well, where it'll show you a breakdown of all these projected values and how much they're actually going for, so you can look and see which guys actually stand out as values on the ESPN platform. But Chris Godwin was one of the few wide receivers that really just stood out as a bad value here. Up next, I thought I'd cover a tight end as well. I've got Darren Waller. I personally am out on Darren Waller even at his seventh round ADP. I just think that he's an old tight end on a bad offense that hasn't really been meaningful in fantasy for a few years. I think it's going to be really hard for him to return value on his ADP even in a snake draft. And he actually comes in as the worst value at the tight end position as well on ESPN. I just don't recommend spending the 5.5% of your budget that they recommend as a pre-draft value on ESPN. Given his ADP, he should only cost you around 2.5%. So you're paying almost double for a tight end on for Darren Waller if you draft him in an auction draft on ESPN, and it's just hard to justify that for a player that I'm already out on. So if you want Darren Waller, you can maybe take a stab at him in underdog because he maybe has some weekly upside. But in general, I'm out on Darren Waller, and especially on ESPN on the ESPN platform, I just wouldn't do it. Up next, we've got a bit of a shocker, actually. The model does show that Josh Allen is a pretty bad value in auction drafts on the ESPN platform. It's hard to say that he really could be a bad value because he's got a realistic shot to finish as the quarterback one in fantasy. But on ESPN, he's projected to cost you about 18.5% of your budget. That is a massive price tag. That's effectively a late second round price tag. And despite having an ADP 8 picks after Patrick Mahomes, who's got an ADP towards the end of the second round, he is only $1 cheaper on ESPN, which is basically it's the equivalent of drafting Josh Allen at the end of the second round. I've found, especially in all the mock drafts that I've done, that I don't really like drafting the quarterbacks in the second round. I prefer to wait till that third round to get Mahomes, Hurts, or Allen. And this sort of validates that. It just suggests that it's not worth drafting either one of them if you have to pay that second round price tag. And Josh Allen's the one who actually does most notably or more consistently make it to the third round as a draft pick. So if you're going to draft Josh Allen, I think there's plenty of other places to do it. I just wouldn't recommend paying up for him in an auction draft on ESPN this season. And last here, we've got Damien Pierce. I actually think Damien Pierce is one of the worst values just in a snake draft even. I've got him ranked 15 spots below ADP as my running back 37, despite an ADP of running back 22. Like I've said previously, I think that Devin Singletary is going to get a lot more work than people are giving him credit for. This Houston offense is going to be really bad. They're going to be led by a rookie quarterback who, although I do like, I just don't think it's going to be a very quick adjustment for him in the NFL. He's got a pretty mediocre wide receiver core. There's nothing to really write home about from this offensive line either. This is going to be a team that's going to struggle quite a bit. They're probably going to be losing a lot of games, and honestly, I think the receiving work could go to Devin Singletary in this offense. So I don't think Damien Pierce is a really great draft pick even at his ADP. And on the ESPN platform, he's projected to cost you 13% of your budget. At his ADP, he should only cost you about 4%. So you're paying over triple to get Damien Pierce if you draft him on ESPN. For comparison, on the ESPN platform, Chris Olave has the same pre-draft value as Damien Pierce. On Underdog right now, Chris Olave has an ADP of 19th overall compared to Damien Pierce being the 22nd running back off the board. So that just goes to show you how bad of a value on the ESPN platform Damien Pierce really is. I can't imagine paying anywhere near that pre-draft value for him, and I really just would highly recommend that you let someone else in your league do that this season. So that'll do it for the worst values on the ESPN platform and auction drafts video. I'll be sure to try and update you guys throughout the offseason how these values have changed. Obviously, these pre-draft values are going to be quite sporadic over the course of the offseason. We're going to see them change quite a bit, especially as we get into training camp and a lot of these values adjust. Maybe more people will start drafting on platforms other than underdogs. We should see some ADPs really move around quite a bit. So I'll be sure to update this video probably come second week of August just to sort of reevaluate where we are at on these players. I think it's a lot of fun looking at this. I've found that it's been a really good way for me to go into my drafts knowing which platform I'm on and how I can really bend that to my advantage. I hope you guys can utilize this too. I'll try and put out information as well regarding the pre-draft values of players on other platforms as well, other than just ESPN, so you guys can use those in your drafts. That'll be on my website for free, obviously, so you guys can go take a look at that. Hopefully it can help you out as well. If you did like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you take the time to give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm, really trying to grow the channel. We're somewhere over 380 subscribers right now. I'd love to hit 500 by the start of the NFL season. So if this is your first time here, I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you want more videos like this, please do subscribe. You can click the notification bell so you get notifications when more videos come out. And yeah, we put out a video almost every day right now. You can pretty much count on 4 to 5 a week. And up next, I'll be going over my quarterback tier list, and I'll follow that up with the other tier list videos for each of their positions, and then we'll get into more draft analysis and player breakdowns and all that stuff. So it's going to be a lot of fun. The NFL season is closing in faster than you might imagine, and it's going to be a really fun ride. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.